Welcome everybody, and just quick note, this is really James Previtt's project, the Out of Office Radio, which will be joining us for the summer school in Greece. And basically it is also hopefully quite connected to Sound Out, which is the next presenter, which we'll also be discussing. So we were discussing and seeing that we might do some ad hoc live broadcastings, but more to that, I think, with Jim.
So I'm James Previtt, also known as Jim, which is short for James in England, but it's apparently it's quite hard to understand that in Finland. So you can call me James or Jim. And Adnan, I'm not part of the GEM project, but Adnan has invited me as a visiting artist to take part in this. Um, how do I make this? Okay. So just very, very quickly about me, and this is a short bio here. So I'm a British artist, but I've been based in Helsinki since 2013. I'm an artist and teacher, and I make my history is in sculpture, but also in DIY technologies as well. But now I make sculptures and social sculptures, and often that involves working with other people. And I guess this project that I'm going to be talking about is radio has come out of this artistic practice of working with other people. So, and I like to work with other people just because of, as I've written here, it brings an open-ended polyvocal approach to art making, where you have to embrace other people's voices and include them into that. So, out of office radio. It is a mobile community radio for art and experimental sound. Um, and what that means is that it's an internet radio. So we broadcast on the internet on the website, the URL at the bottom here, which is www.oooradio.live. But it's also a set of tools that fit in a rucksack, basically, that anybody in Helsinki, because it's based in Helsinki, can borrow to make their own radio. And we are studioless or nomadic, which means that it just anywhere can become the studio, really. You can set it up within 20 minutes, probably less than that if you really knew what you were doing. And the whole thing is battery powered, which means that we can broadcast from public space, as long as you have an internet connection. So this is the main mode of broadcasting. And this is the equipment, the core equipment. So it exists. It's a laptop, a mixer, and the mixer runs on batteries. The laptop has a battery and can be powered by so the mix can be powered by the laptop. And we have two headphones. You can plug in more headphones, so bring your own headphones if you want. And then we have three set microphones in two vocal microphones, and this Rode microphone is a more ambient 360. Well, it's not quite 360 microphone, which will pick up sound from all around. And this is a hydrophone, and we have a contact microphone, but it's not working very well, so I'm not going to guarantee that will be there. And then a set of cables and some microphone stands. So we have two microphone stands. This is one it folds up to be this size, and this is a homemade microphone stand out of a bit of wood. So that's also quite DIY. And it has what it's sat on here is a banner. It's kind of a multi-use banner, which you can see. It gets used around the place in different places. For example, here, so it can be used as a thing to set up on. So, for example, in Greece, we could use it as a something on a beach. You can also be used as a sun shelter or a windbreak. And it was made by an artist called Timo Vaitinen. And me and Timo also made this speaker, which I won't be bringing with us because it's very heavy. So, quick history is that OOO radio, or out of office radio, it's called out of office because we don't have a home. Out of office, and it can do it. outside, but shortened to OOO radio or OO radio. We don't really mind. And we established it in 2023 with Samantha Lippett and myself. So this is Sam here and me on our very first outdoor broadcast. And this was in the end of November, and it was -5 outside and snowing. So I wouldn't recommend it. I hope it's a bit warmer than that in Greece. But we set it up. It began life as a space for experimental sound in Helsinki. So there wasn't really. There are a couple of open internet radios in Helsinki, but none of them really were a space for experimental art and sound. And we were also interested in making something that you could use to broadcast in public space. So that came partly through to my interest in sculpture and public sculpture, and also Sam's interest in making radio broadcasts in public space and what radio does. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a little bit, because that's the other reason why we set it up was. It's important to say that I come to radio not from a sound perspective or a radio perspective. So I had no history of sound or radio before this, apart from making a couple of works for a radio station in the UK, for a community radio station. But through that, I got very interested in the possibilities of radio and what it can do as an accessibility tool, how it's easy for anybody to get involved in radio and to use radio, much easier than, say, to ask people to get involved in an art project. So if you ask them, do you want to be part of a radio program? People will usually say yes. And here you can see, so we wanted to set up a set of tools that anybody could use and borrow. Originally, on the left here, you can see it's a bike trailer. So everything fits in a bike trailer. It now has a rucksack as well, because in Finland, bike trailers are not very good in the winter with all the snow. But also the bike trailer fits the speaker in it, which is the heaviest thing actually. And it's a homemade speaker. And we've done broadcasts from all over the place. So this is where we originally set up in a gallery called Forum Box in an exhibition, and it can be used for all kinds of things. This is a discussion show we had, and as you can see, it's quite DIY. And other things like this, which is a conversation while also modeling the other person out of clay. And the radio it's a super interesting program actually, because we interviewed people about certain things about their lives whilst also making a portrait of each other at the same time, and you get noises of the clay as well as our pondering opinions of what's going on. And this is what we're interested in as a radio station. So we're interested in radio as art and radio as a way of being together. Conviviality, and I'm going to talk about these two in a second. Radio as a way of being together, conviviality. Radio art, sound art, DIY approach is the fact that it's accessible, that we can open it up and it's accessible to all, anybody can use it. And that feeds down into how we have set up the tools. Also, ecological thinking. Radio as having a voice. We're also interested in slow approaches to making and slowness. And what we mean by that is maybe long form radio. So we were just part of a 24-hour broadcast called Reveil, which broadcast the dawn chorus from around the world constantly for 24 hours. And we've also done longer form broadcasts where we go for as long as the batteries last, for example. And we're in favour of the experimental and the playful, and so we don't really have any things that you can't do apart from be offensive to other people. And this image here is of Tuukka Kaila, who's an artist, and this is in his studio set up on an ironing board. And He was making a performance using live weather VLF band radio waves that are taken from terrestrial and cosmic weather events, and he started to mix these into an hour-long performance that we broadcast live on the radio. And then we've done other things. This is some examples of setting up. This is called the Open Greenhouse in Helsinki that anyone can come and use. And we did a day-long broadcast there, broadcasting sound events, talks, poetry, and there's some cooking going on behind here. So it became a very nice social event, really. So we're also interested when I talked about radio as a way of being together. These are the kinds of events that happen. How radio has a way of bringing people together and bringing a focus on something. And this is just an example. This is a broadcast that I did on my own on the top of one of the biggest hills in Helsinki on the winter solstice. So I have a series that I've been making on solstices and the equinox. But it started a snowstorm halfway through. So this is what the equipment ended up towards the end. But the broadcast still lasts, and this is me looking very happy. But so out of office radio, these are the principles, I guess, that we've set it up to be, which is as low powered as possible, so as light as possible, so that we could carry it around. And this is how we've sourced all the equipment, really. And that it's good quality, and that the equipment is as easy to use as possible. Most of the stuff we try and use wherever possible, open source or freeware, so that also that it makes it as accessible as possible. And we also are guaranteed we have set out to support radio networks and also local radio makers. So we're part of the Independent Community Radio Network, for example, and we've supported many artists around Helsinki now, and people are starting to use us more and more. I'm going to come back to this term conviviality and radio as a way of being together now, because these are really important things. I guess they are our core values of what we want to do with the radio. And the term conviviality it also, in English, it means it's a kind of slippery term. It can mean joyfulness and being together, sort of a joyfulness, like being happy together. But it also, so we're using it from this particular book, which was written in 1973, I think, 1973, by Ivan Illich, and it's called Tools for Conviviality. And this, it's very interesting. We read it. We read this as part of a reading group that we did on the radio, where we read a series of books about radio and around this term of conviviality. So we started back with this text, and this text really looks at how we use tools. And I think this is quite interesting, perhaps for you as students and makers that are looking at the ecological effects of the tools that you use, essentially. So Ivan Illich was exploring how we examine the tools we use and what they do to us, essentially. And I will read this. I choose the term conviviality to designate the opposite of industrial productivity. I intend it to mean autonomous and creative intercourse among persons, and the intercourse of persons with their environment. And this, in contrast with the conditioned response of persons to the demands made on them by others and by a man-made environment. I consider conviviality to be individual freedom realized in personal interdependence, and as such, an intrinsic ethical value. I believe that in any society, as conviviality is reduced below a certain level, no amount of industrial productivity can effectively satisfy the needs it creates amongst society's members. So basically, what Ivan Illich is talking about is examining how we use tools and what they do and how we use them. And what we mean by autonomous is that it can stand by itself. That we have, as makers, we might have also as the tool users, we don't become dependent on the tools or conditioned by the tools, that we have our own freedom to use the tools in the way that we want to use them. And this is interesting to look back on this. He wrote this in 1973, so it's quite interesting to look back at this now. It has its limitations in a post-industrial society, perhaps, where we use technology and tools in a far more complex way than Ivan Illich was talking about. But the end results, the book is actually quite succinct in predicting what might happen, what has happened to our industrialized technological society. And so what is a convivial tool? This is coming back. So Ivan Illich asked us to think about tools that are convivial, and convivial tools are things that enable you to have an autonomy. So convivial tools are those which give each person who uses them the greatest opportunity to enrich the environment with the fruits of his or her vision. Industrial tools deny this possibility to those who use them, and they allow their designers to determine the meaning and expectations of others. Most tools today cannot be used in a convivial fashion. So what we're talking about here is how a tool, if a tool is impossible to use without in your own way to customize to do what you want to do, then it's probably not convivial. And conviviality for Ivan Illich is a tool should help society to realize its gains, its objectives. And that might be to help a society to become more together. So tools foster conviviality when they can be easily used by anybody as often or as seldom as desired. And that they can accomplish the purpose of the user. So you could look at this little diagram here. So think about a tool. So if you're using, I don't know, Instagram, yes, you have frequency of use. Yes, or it does all of these, perhaps the ease of use. It can be used by anybody. Its purpose, then you start to think, it has restrictions here. So we can start to think, and you also can't adjust it. You can't change how the users, you can't use those things. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't use Instagram or we shouldn't use things. It's just to start to think about whether that tool enables us to be together, enables us to do things together in a better way. So these tools do they allow users to pursue their own goals in their own unique ways? And this is where we're coming out from radio, essentially. So what we're interested in radio is that it can be low cost, it can be easy to use, it can be carried away, it can be adjusted, and it can be all the tools that we are using can be used for people to be together and make things together. The other person that we're coming up, that took up this term was a radio maker called Tetsuo Kogawa, who's a Japanese radio artist who started off making his own DIY radios for broadcasting in Tokyo, and then had a network, kind of relayed network of small FM broadcasters around Tokyo. And we're very influenced by him. He took up this term of conviviality and convivial tools. And I guess this is a better way of thinking about it. The tools are not only technological means, but also a space for sharing that relates individual bodies. So this idea that a tool should be not just for an individual, but should be used to relate between two people. And that kind of comes back to this original term from Ivan Illich here, which is the intercourse of the persons with their environment and other people. So how people interact together. Yeah, and he ran this radio home run in Tokyo in, I think it was 1983 to 1989. And this is Tetsuo Kagawa making some radio art with different receivers, relaying stuff and remixing things. And he comes, maybe this is going a bit theoretical to you, but Tetsuo Kagawa some of the things that he talked about, and this is from Radio Homeland, this image in the middle, and as he calls this a typical image of people gathering around together. So the difference, also Tetsuo Kagawa was interested in radio, free radio, and what radio could do beyond mass media. So we're talking beyond mass media channels, which is also what we're interested in. And our radio is making radio that doesn't exist, doesn't have a place on other radio platforms or other platforms. So, this is some quotes by Kogawa, which is as Felix Guattari stressed the radically different function of free radio from conventional mass media. His notion of transmission transversal suggests that, unlike conventional radio, free radio does not impose programs on a mass audience whose numbers have been forecast, but freely comes across to a molecular public so that it changes the nature of communication between those who speak and those who listen. And I think these are some of the things that I guess there's a political aspect to what we're talking about. And also said the radio would be the finest possible communication apparatus in public life, a vast network of pipes. That is to say, it would be if it knew how to receive as well as to transmit, how to let the listener speak as well as hear, how to bring him into a relationship instead of isolating him. So here, maybe this is coalescing a little bit, the idea of a convivial tool that, that brings people into a relationship. And this is the last quote I'll talk about now, and then I'll talk a bit about the ecology section. So, and this hopefully maybe sets the tone about what we might do in Evia, which is, so this is by another artist called Sumagan Sivanesan, who started making radio from an art perspective as well, and wrote this very small book which I can share with you all, which is it's great. It's called Radios Appear in Contemporary Art, and he says that collaborating with artist community developed platforms, Fugitive Radio, which is the radio platform that Sumagan runs, promotes alternative sociable medias. And I love this term of alternative sociable medias as opposed to social medias. So Sumagan is primarily concerned with how this can do something different from, for example, social medias, which are often visual and produce force or encourage us to hyper image everything in what we do and to hyper-produce. Sorry, I'll go back now to alternative sociable medias. It approaches radio not as mass media, but rather a catalyst for coming together to pursue unforeseen possibilities. By producing non-visual micromedia, might Fugitive Radio circumvent the auto-entrepreneurial performative pressures of mega-corporate social medias, under which so-called creative industries, including art, are subsumed? So this is a open-ended question, which I think also neatly sums up perhaps what we're trying to do with Open Office Radio. A little bit about the ecological part of radio. So it uses very small bandwidth. It uses a 128 kilobit stream. And this is the difference about what it might use in terms of power. You can see, so this is data according to Netflix. You use about 1 gigabyte of data per hour for streaming a TV show or a movie in standard definition, and up to 3 gigabytes for HD. Whereas listening to a 128 kilobit stream uses only 60 megabytes per hour. So you can see the wide disparities between what we're talking about here. So broadcasting to one listener for 1 hour would use 50 megabits of bandwidth. So there's slightly more, and this increases if you use 80 megabits. Sorry, I don't know. It increases basically the more listeners you have, and this has a wider impact throughout. So, for example, this is a data center. So we've done quite a bit of research for our server. For example, it's in finding the greenest solution for a data server, which is actually in Finland. It's called Hetzinger, which uses predominantly, well, it says it's carbon neutral, but also partly because of the cold temperatures, it reduces the energy use for the cooling of the data centers. But all these data centers, for example, are using huge amounts of energy. So what we're going to do in Evia, when we broadcast, we'll probably be using stuff on 12-volt batteries or a laptop battery. And though that kind of energy consumption, we're looking at how, we could potentially run this off solar panels very easily. And again, the server power that we have is very low. At the moment, we don't have an archive, and one of the reasons is partly because of this reason that we don't want to store huge amounts of data that people don't listen to. So these are the kinds of things that we are thinking about in terms of the radio. And and also we're interested in the radio when it comes back to this, what is that here? I've gone slow approaches and slowness. So the out of office radio, we try and resist the pressure to be on demand. And that means that we don't want to broadcast all the time. We're not worried about broadcasting 24 hours a day for 7 days a week. We will broadcast when we broadcast. And we started to gather an audience of that will listen in to the stuff that we have. And of course, we are actually aiming to have some content online as a curated set of an archive, which might be 3 or 4, but not, for example, using some. And this comes back to maybe this idea of a convivial tool again, is not to use something like SoundCloud or Mixcloud, partly because of how they might be able to withdraw the usage terms very easily. So it's having control over the media that we have. But what are we going to do in Evia? So we are going to, we have, I think, 3 full days to work together, and perhaps up to 4 days. So we're gonna make radio together. Essentially, we're gonna hang out together and use it as a convivial tool. We will listen to the waters, as in the title of the whole program. So we're gonna listen to the sea, maybe find other waters to listen to. And I think we have 2 streams, which will be water and fire. So we might also listen to the fire, and that could be the sun. It could be anything. It could be to take these things quite abstractly or concretely as you find. So we will make live and recorded radio. We have scheduled that we will do one scheduled broadcast on the final day, on the Thursday, I think it is, which will be a 2-hour broadcast. And this might be recorded stuff that we've done throughout the week. There might be some live elements. There might be other things that you want to bring that we can play over the radio. But I also have a little hope that we might do at least one live broadcast every day. And you'll find how quickly and easy it is to do this. It's interesting how people find radio voice and how it brings people together in a fashion. How radio pulls people together. I think the radio voice is interesting. That this comes back to the ease of getting people involved and it's partly the disembodyingness of the voice, how the voice is separated from the image. And I think that's freeing in a way that it allows people the freedom to do other things and to take on other identities, maybe. So yeah, coming back, I went off a little bit there. So we're going to work around ideas of ecology, water and fire. We may want to interview people, maybe some around science, some of the science things. You may want to bring things to read, poetry. If you're musicians, you may want to play something. You may want to bring some sounds. We're very open as to what that is. And we can talk together as a group and decide how we want to do these things. It may be that you want to do some things individually, some things together as a group. And we're very open for other experimental approaches. So if you wanted to come to me and say, I want to do this crazy thing where I want to record, I don't know, to make a sound loop with different from radios and feedback loops, then that's great. Very welcome, all of this stuff. Things to bring with you if you want to. Sound recorders. If you have a sound recorder, you can bring it with you. So we have the microphones, the equipment that I showed you earlier. I will bring that with us in a rucksack. If you have other microphones that you want to use, please bring them. If you have a hydrophone or a contact mic, please bring them. I will bring a selection of cables so that we can most probably connect them up. Bring other things of interest, texts, poetry, bring ideas and playfulness. And yeah, I hope that we can make some really nice stuff together. That's kind of the end of my presentation. Adnan, do you have anything? I'll bring back to the tools here.
Great, thank you so much. More exactly the tool. So I will also bring a gun microphone. I have a contact mic which should be working, but again, let's not count too much on those contact mics. I think you're going to be ordering also a hydrophone.
Yeah, it should be arriving tomorrow.
Great.
So we should have two hydrophones, and they'll probably work slightly differently. So we will see how they work.
Perfect. And I will also have the Zoom microphone with me. And of course, you can all use also mobile devices, any smartphone.
Exactly. I will bring 2 Zoom recorders with me as well.
So we will have enough recording equipment. Of course, the idea very much is also to see if you want to do any ad hoc live broadcasting sessions. We were thinking, of course, this is all up, then I think we should discuss this not now, but then when the location is to also maybe use in the final night, do some of the DJing, mixing, etc., also as a live broadcast and actually announce it to the radio community. I think that was something we discussed.
Yeah, and I would like to do some mini broadcasts outside, maybe on the beach or somewhere else outside.
Mm-hmm.
On a boat. Let's see.
We might have a boat. That's also something which Dimitris wanted to be checking and see if there is a boat available. That would be great to go out a little bit and record those sounds of the water. Of course, the overall overarching topic is biodiversity, and we approach it from 2 angles, fire and water. Of course, fire and water do come together in the kitchen when you boil pasta, so there is something to be looked at or recorded at. There is also some times when those 2 merge, but I'll be doing the fire group and Jim will be doing the water group. So that's kind of how we'll start. We'll be all together in the beginning for sure, and then we might interrupt into 2 groups and then come back together. I think that's more or less the plan for those 3 days. 3 days is going to be a very short time, so we'll be running around and producing. Let's see if there's any questions, if that's okay for you. If there's questions, otherwise we'll
I'll maybe stop sharing this now. You can see me. Hello.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Let's see if our colleagues have any questions. Yes, please.